So, ladies and gentlemen, it was like a scene from an episode of Arrow. If you ever watched Arrow, the show, DC Comics, Oliver Queen, that was my show. Loved it. It's gone now, but that was my show. It was almost as if someone decided to become a vigilante of their own in real life. That's right. The CEO of United Healthcare was killed right outside of the hotel that he was apparently supposed to appear inside of for a United Healthcare conference. When I first heard this story, I was like, is this for real? And I had to look into it a little bit deeper and tell myself, like, okay, yes, this is for real. What is this really about? And what does this say about the system, the healthcare system that we have in place? Let's get started with this new clip here from NBC News.
Back. Police say Thompson was shot at least twice. The Minnesota man was pronounced dead at the hospital. The suspect taking off on an e-bike and remains at large. Thompson's wife telling NBC News her husband had recently received threats, but police say the motive for the attack is unknown. The brazen murder taking place only a few blocks from where thousands are gathered tonight for the Christmas tree lighting at Rockefeller Plaza. Police promising there will be high security. Stephanie Goss joins us now from the crime scene. Stephanie, what more do we know tonight?
Well, Lester, Brian Thompson was walking down this city block at roughly 6:30 this morning. He was expected to speak an hour and a half later at United Healthcare's conference here at the Hilton Hotel. He never made it. Tonight in New York City, a manhunt is underway and a shooter is on the loose.
Pause. So first and foremost, I know exactly where this hotel is located. I'm very familiar with Midtown in Manhattan, but I have a question about something about the 6:30 time. We're not going to play the video on here, obviously, but how did the shooter know what time that Brian Thompson was going to arrive at the hotel? So we know that the conference, she said it was starting around 8 a.m. But how did the shooter know that he was going to be there at 6:30? Why not 7? Why not 7:30? Why not 6:15? So that tells me that he must have been waiting for quite some time. Who knows? He could have gotten there around 6 o'clock in the morning. We don't know. But he was waiting for him. So you know that this was personal, fam. This is not just some, oh, I don't like this person, so I'm just going to, this was a personal attack here against Brian Thompson. Now, I want to show you something else from this video. We're not going to show the actual shooting, of course, but there was something else that I noticed. Let's come in here. There was a woman that was standing right next to, kind of on the other side of Brian Thompson. Now, the shooter did not point his weapon in her direction. She's fine. She ran away. So that's another way you know that this was a direct hit on Brian Thompson. Let's come in with a little bit more information here, and then I want to show you something else.
CEO Brian Thompson.
Every indication is that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack.
NBC News obtained this video from a law enforcement official briefed on the investigation.
We'll pause right here. So what you don't see, I'm trying to circle it here so you can see it a little bit. Over here towards the right, there's another person standing here. Again, this is a hotel. So there's a woman right here and she's standing. This woman obviously was spared. The shooter did not attack her, doesn't even point their weapon in her direction. Again, that's how you know it was a direct hit against Brian Thompson. Now, Brian Thompson is right here. So his back was turned to the shooter. The shooter also has on a backpack. But again, that's not, to me, that's not unusual or suspicious. It's not uncommon for people in the city to have a backpack. People in the city, like here in Boston, have backpacks as well. So that's not something that you would deem as suspicious. But what's crazy to me is when I watched this video and I was thinking to myself, like, I know exactly where this is. Like, I know exactly where this hotel is located because I'm familiar with the area. And this woman was standing outside and had like, it seemed like a coffee or something in her hand. And then she takes off and she runs. Now, they're saying that after all of this, he got on an e-bike and took off. So it's obvious that this was planned out. Like he knew exactly where he was going to be, what time he was going to be there. And he also knew how he can exit pretty effectively. They haven't found him. Still right now, they still have not found him. We'll come back in here with this a little bit more from NBC.
Leg.
At the scene, we recover 3 live 9mm rounds and 3 discharged 9mm shell casings. The motive for this murder currently is unknown.
Emergency responders couldn't save the 50-year-old father of 2, who was later pronounced dead at the hospital. The Minnesota native was in town for a United Healthcare conference being held at the Hilton Hotel. Police say at 6:44 a.m., Thompson was walking to the Hilton from a different hotel where he was staying. The shooter, wearing a black ski mask and hoodie, was already there, according to the NYPD.
So you heard that? The shooter was already there. So he was waiting for Brian. He was waiting for him. So we found out a little bit more information as well. They revealed a couple of more images of the shooter. I do want to get into that clip here from News Nation. And then I want to talk about what was written on the ammunition that was used in that gun that shot Brian Thompson. Listen to this.
Joe, these images that we've seen that were just released in the last couple of hours by the NYPD show the suspect is a white man, but we really don't have much more than that to go on. His face is almost completely covered. These are images taken from, we think it might be a coffee shop, some sort of business establishment, just a short time before the shooting. He could have ditched all those clothes and that gray backpack by now.
Which is correct. She's right about that. And not only that, but this guy was smart enough to the point where he knew to at least have his face covered to whatever place he went to prior to being at that spot outside of the hotel. So even the other camera footage that we see right here, his face is covered. Now, I saw a couple of pictures on social media where it looked like it's showing his whole face. I don't even know if those pictures are 100% real because people were saying, well, that's not the right picture or whatever. But this is what we found so far. I don't know how people can look at this and say, oh, I know who this person is, but they were smart enough. He knew to make sure that his face was going to be covered prior to arriving at that location. She's right. Chances are he's probably already ditched the clothes. He's probably not even in New York. He took off on a e-bike, that was interesting. It was just like, and not to laugh, but it was kind of comical that he just like jumped on an e-bike and took off just like he was Oliver Queen, like the Green Arrow or someone like that. Mouse said that somebody tracked the bike. Yeah, but they still haven't, found him. And what I think is interesting is that they said there's a massive manhunt for this individual. And I want to prove a point. When people that are in a position of wealth, whenever they are attacked or whenever they are killed, the police are willing to have a manhunt to find the person who killed them. You also notice this with the case of JonBenet Ramsey, right? Like for years, they've still been searching for JonBenet Ramsey, or they were trying to find out what happened to her. But you have to remember that family also was very wealthy. There are people that are killed, people that are missing all the time that are either working class or they're poor. And there isn't a massive manhunt for their killers. Oftentimes the police don't care. I've said this before. If you're a runaway, oftentimes the police are not really trying to find you. But when it is someone that is in a position of, somewhat power, he was the CEO of United Healthcare. And then to go along with that, I mean, he's, just given who he is, they're like, oh, we got to find the person who killed him. That is not the same for other people that come from a different class. So keep that in mind.
I'm sure he did. That's, what the speculation is as to why he was carrying the backpack, that he planned this well in advance, as you stated, and he had his escape route going. And at one point he knew where he was going to change those clothes. And they will follow that path as far as they can and take it from there into Central Park, if that, in fact, is where he went to. So, everything is going to hinge on the cameras and putting a timeline and a a frame by frame approach to where his directions went, and pick up more cameras from the stores, from everybody that's, associated with the programs with the NYPD, and they will start piecing this together. But this, make no mistake about it, this is well planned.
Yeah.
Very much well planned. And I do want to mention this as well. The book bag thing, they keep bringing up the book bag, and I cannot say this enough. In cities like New York and Boston and DC, it is not uncommon to see someone walking down the street carrying a book bag. And I want to say that because I don't want people to develop this type of, fear when they see someone walking down the street with a book bag now, like wherever they are. And I say that because we experienced that here in Boston after the Boston Marathon bombing. There was a heightened fear among the people, seeing people bringing book bags into buildings. And like, there are a number of rules that were implemented here in the city. Like, that's the reason why you can no longer take a book bag into a concert here at Boston. I was at a Celtics game not too long ago when my parents were here, and I couldn't even bring my purse in. You have to lock your purse up in a locker. That was never the case before. So I say that because I don't want people to freak out about, oh my God, there's someone with a book bag. Again, because we're in cities where there's public transportation and a lot of people do take public transportation, it's not uncommon to see someone in the city carrying a book bag because they may take other things in the book bag with them that they would normally have in their car. So I do just want to say that there. But we have to get into something else, because Brian Thompson, being the CEO of United Healthcare, it's not just the fact that he is the CEO of a company that has basically slowly killed people in the United States. They are terrible at processing and paying claims. And I know this from firsthand experience. I'll get into that in just a second. But it's not just that. There was something else about Brian Thompson, and shout out to James Lee for this video. I want to get into this here as well, because something that James Lee points out is that Brian Thompson was also apparently under investigation. Listen to this here.
This might be the story that unites all of us Americans. It's got something for everybody. And before I go on, I just want to say that this was a real human being with a real family, and we shouldn't be celebrating anybody's offing. That being said, a lot of people are. These comments are quite joyful, one might say. Possibly warranted, because United Health is quite an awful company. Here they're denying coverage, also overbilling people, all kinds of shenanigans. But let's talk about the actual crime here. Was this a hit or just some disgruntled person whose coverage was denied? 80-90% of online commenters are saying this is a professional hit job. The New York Times also indicates premeditation. This guy apparently knew exactly where he was going to be and waited for him for a long time, which leads us to possible motivations. Shipwreck dissected this beautifully this morning. Basically, the CEO, Brian Thompson, was under investigation for potentially defrauding investors. He and other executives had insider information that they were under investigation by the DOJ because the company was getting involved in some sort of monopoly scheme. Here's when that investigation started. Insiders started dumping shares, including Thompson right here on February 16th, 2024 for a tune of $15 million, right before the news came public and the stock took a nosedive. And with the stock price jumping up after this news was announced, it's hard to argue that the shareholders were not happy, or not unhappy. We're happy. They were happy. And guess who happens to be the top recipient of United Health Group's lobbying dollars? It's none other than Kamala Harris. Another stick it to you from everybody else who wants to pile on to the most unpopular presidential candidate in U.S. history. So on one side, you got the working class laughing at this news because they hate CEOs and they hate how corporations run America. And on the other side, you got the ruling class, the shareholders, apparently pleased because he defrauded them of their investment. Well, one final note, I almost forgot. This is also great for independent journalism. Some guy on the internet who tracks city bikes, he apparently was able to trace which city bike dock the shooter left the bike at before the police knew even what was going on, and made that information public. Meanwhile, legacy media is regurgitating the exact same talking points over and over because they're too lazy to do any original reporting. Anyway, I think the theme here has to be anti-corruption, right? If you are a fiduciary, don't defraud your investors. And if you're an insurance company, don't deny coverage to your customers. and we can all just kind of live our lives in peace. I think America is ready for a redemption. Let's all be a part of this change.
So to that point, things are definitely starting to change. It could be that the person, the shooter, it could be that maybe he knew or had a family member or a friend that may have lost their life because United Healthcare did not cover them fully when they should have. We don't know, and we may never know. But the reality is this brings up a question about the system, right? When we talk about the system, I want you to see what was written on the ammunition. Look at this. Police release new photos as they search for the gunman who killed United Healthcare CEO. It says here's another picture, by the way. Another picture here where you can see a little bit more of his face, but he still has the hood on. Like he literally has on, I think, is this a green jacket or a gray jacket? If it's green, that kind of does remind you of Arrow. But he has the hood on his head, still trying to protect his image. This part right here, it says that the ammunition that was used was emblazoned with the words deny, defend, and depose. This is according to 2 law enforcement officials on Saturday. So let's think about that for a second. If you're United Healthcare, deny the claim, defend the lawsuit, depose the patients. So this obviously was apparently personal to the shooter. If I were to make an educated guess, probably personal. And what does that mean about the system? I want to remind you of a movie I saw many years ago. It was called John Q. If you saw this movie in the chat, let me know. If you've seen the movie John Q, raise your hand. Let me know if you saw the movie. If you have not seen this movie, you need to watch it. Because John Q is about, and Denzel Washington does a great job here. I think it's probably one of his best performances. Everybody points to Training Day, but I think he was phenomenal in this movie. Denzel Washington has a son in the movie. His son needs serious surgery that costs thousands of dollars. Insurance is not going to cover even the vast majority of it. So Denzel Washington decides to take matter into his own hands. I'm not going to get into the details if you haven't seen it, so I want you to see the movie. I remember the first time I saw this movie and I said to myself, once again, this is a message to everyone in this country, just how corrupt and unjust the healthcare system is in this country. No one should have to sit there and choose whether or not you're going to let your child die, or whether or not you're going to have to go out there and beg for thousands and thousands of dollars so that they can get the surgery that they need to save their life. But that's the United States. This is the country that we live in. We don't have healthcare for everyone in this country. And I can tell you a personal experience. My first job out of college, my first full-time job, was in healthcare. I worked in billing. And you know what my job was? I had to contact insurance companies that did not pay. This is why I'm very familiar with United Healthcare. Out of all the insurance companies that I dealt with over the years, United Healthcare and Cigna were the worst ones about payment. United Healthcare was the worst. Most of the time, when I had to pick up the phone to make a call and ask them to pay, it was United Healthcare who did not want to pay for patients' claims. Blue Cross Blue Shield was pretty good. TRICARE was phenomenal. Medicare was the best. When you have patients that need life-saving surgery or procedures, and the only health insurance company that is offered to them, again, because it's attached to your employer, just happens to be a company like United Healthcare that doesn't really want to pay anything, that means that you need money to cover what they are not going to pay. If we had a healthcare system in this country where everybody had healthcare, this would not be a problem. You wouldn't have to rely on your health insurance being attached to your employer. In fact, you don't have a say-so in that either. You don't have a say-so in what health insurance companies that your employer wants to attach itself to. There is a bit of rage that has happened among the American people. And people are saying, like, why are people online, like, not upset and hurt by this? To that, I would say, why are some of the same people who are asking me that question not upset and hurt by the genocide in Gaza? I noticed they seem to be some of the same people. Some of them. It is very difficult to feel empathy or sympathy for someone who's been the CEO of a company that has basically killed hundreds and thousands of people over the years because they would not pay these claims. United Healthcare was the worst. You watch the movie John Q, and I think you'll have even better understanding if you haven't experienced it yourself. Now, I told you TRICARE was one of the best and Medicare was the best. But the reality is, in order to get TRICARE, that is for service members and their families. You shouldn't have to join the military to get decent health insurance. I want to remind you that members of Congress have great health insurance that a lot of you will never have because you're not in Congress. How is that fair when they're supposed to represent the people? It's not. And then I want to land with this. The fact that Brian Thompson was killed, it makes you wonder, are things starting to change? Are people starting to find another way to fight back against the billionaires, against the wealthy health insurance industries? Is this the way of fighting back? And I would remind you this as well. Killing Brian Thompson doesn't change the system. Because you see, now that Brian Thompson is gone and he's no longer CEO, the system will just put someone else in that spot. So the system itself does not change. It's no different from swapping out politicians in Congress that are a part of the same party and hoping that you get something different. The system itself does not change. Now that Brian Thompson is dead, does that mean that people that are under United Healthcare health insurance are all of a sudden going to be covered? No. Does that mean that everyone in this country gets universal health care? No. I told you I just watched the show recently called The Madness, and I highly recommend that you watch it. One of the things that the billionaire character says in the show is that if you kill me, there's already 100 more of me that are lined up ready to replace me. This is why I advocate for changing the system. And the health insurance system needs to change in this country. It is going to take a fight. It's going to take a fight against the health insurance lobby. It's going to take a fight against not just United Healthcare, but Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, all of them. And in order for that fight to fully begin, this is why people have to ask themselves this question. The movement, in my opinion, has to happen outside of electoral politics because a lot of the politicians belong to the health insurance lobby. So they're not going to be on your side. And even some of the ones that don't take that money are a part of parties that do. And they don't really want to be on your side because they don't want to use or lose their chance of having a successful political career. So the movement has to happen outside of the political parties. And it has to happen on the ground with the grassroots people. And the question that I ask everybody, is everybody ready for that movement? Because the death of Brian Thompson doesn't change the system. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.